Hi, good morning, or afternoon, or whatever time span you're in. So, today I'm going to take a look at the mind of a cult leader. So, as you see flashing before you, these are all cult leaders, all of them, and then we're going to read about what goes on in their mind. So, I'm going to get the article because sometimes it's best to have it in black and white. Don't know if you can hear me. Sounds hello. So, dangerous cult leaders. One of the questions that I am often asked by my students in criminology and psychology is how do you know when a cult leader is evil or bad? These, of course, are vague descriptors to some part of extent, but I also get a question when is a cult leader pathological or a danger to others? This is a valid question in view of the historical record of suffering and hurt caused by various cult leaders around the world. From my studies of cults and cult leaders during my time in the FBI, I learnt early on that there are some things to look for at a minimum. Um, Caution this individual is dangerous and in all likelihood will cause harm to others. Having studied at a length the life teachings and behaviors of Jim Jones, David Koresh, Stuart Trail, Charles Manson, Sakal Ashar, Joseph D. Mambo, Marshall Heffer Applewhite, Bohan Rashnish, Warren Jeffs. I can say that what stands out about these individuals is that they were all pathological narcissistic. They all have and had an abundant belief that they were special, that they and they alone had the answers to the problems, and that they had to be revered. They demand perfect loyalty from followers. They overvalue themselves. They devalue those around them. They were intolerant of criticism. Above all, they did not like being questioned or challenged. And yet, in spite of these less than charming traits, they had no trouble attracting those who were willing to overlook these features. These personality traits stand out as the first warning to those who would associate with them, but there are many others. Here is a collection of traits or cult leaders that give hints as a of the psychopathologically ology. This list is not all inclusive, nor is it the final word on the subject. It is mainly my personal collection based on studies and interviews that I conducted in my previous career. If you know of a cult leader who has many of these traits, there is a high possibility that they are hurting themselves around. Oh, I, if you know of a cult leader who has many of these traits, there is a high probability that they are hurting those around them emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, or financially. This does not take into account the hurt that their loved ones will also experience. Here are the typical traits of the pathological cult leader from the dangerous personalities that you should watch out for. He has a grandiose idea of who he is and what he can achieve. He is preoccupied with the fantasies of unlimited success and power and brilliance. The man's blind, unquestioned um, abo- abundance, abundance. I can't remember say that word. Requires exclusive adoration from the followers and outsiders. Has a sense of entitlement, expecting to be treated as a special at all times. Is explosive of others by asking for their money. Exploitive is exploitive of others by asking for their money and that of relatives, putting others at financial risk. Is ignorant, hefty in his behavior or attitude, has a exhausted sense or aggressive sense of power, entitlement that allows him to bend rules and break laws, take sexual advantage of members of his sect or cult. Sex is a requirement with the adults and sub adults as part of a ritual or a rite. Is hypersensitive to how he is seen or perceived by others, publicly devolves others as being inferior, incapable, or not worthy, making members confess their sins or faults publicly, subjecting them to ridicule or humiliation while revealing ex- their weakness of themselves, basically. Has ignored the needs of others, including biological, psychological, emotional, financial needs, is frequently boastful of accomplishments, needs to be the center of attention, does things to distract others to ensure that he or she is being noticed, i.e., by arriving late, using erotic clothing, over dramatic speech, or by making theatrical entrances. Has insisted on always having the best of anything, house, car, jewelry, even when others are to lesser facilities, amenities, or clothes. Doesn't seem to listen well to needs of others. Communication is usually one way in the form of dialects. Heightens gestures and the need to be controlling is part of his personality. Behaves as though people are objects to be used, manipulated, or exploited for personal gain. When criticized, he tends to lash out not just with anger but with rage. Anyone who criticizes or questions him is called an enemy. Refers to non members or non believers as the enemy. Acts impulsive at times, not wishing to know what others think to desire. Believes to himself to be, bigger. Has magical answers or solutions or problems. Is significantly charming. Habitually puts down others as inferior, only he is superior. Has a certain coldness or loftiness about him that makes others worry about who this person really is or whether they really know him. Is deeply offended when they are pre- perceived signs of boredom being ignored or of being slighted. Treats others with contempt and ignorance. Oh, there's a lot. Let me see if I can zoom you some more. Doesn't think there is anything wrong with himself and in fact sees himself as perfection or blessed. Has taken away followers' freedom to leave, to travel, to pursue life and liberties. Has isolated the group physically, moved to a remote area so as to not be observed. Conceals background or family which would disclose how plain and ordinary he is. Sees self as unstoppable, and perhaps has even said so. Uses enforcers to ensure compliance from members or believers. Seems to be highly dependent on tribute, adoration. Will often fish for compliments. Now, when the question is asked, when do we know when a cult leader is bad or evil or toxic? This is the list that I use to survey the cult leader for dangerous traits. Of course, the only way to know anything for sure is to observe and validate, but these characteristics can go a long way to help with that. And as I said, there are other things to look for, and there may be other lists. This is the one that I found most useful from studying these groups and talking to former members of cults. When a cult or organizational leader has a preponderance of those traits, prevalence of those traits, then we can um, uh, that some point those who associate with him will likely suffer physical, emotional, psychological, or financial. And these traits sound familiar to leaders or group sets or organizations known to you, then expect those who associate with them to live in despair or to suffer, even if they don't know yet that they will. So this one was by a guy, let me say his name, Joe Navarro. Joe Navarro. Yeah. So those are the traits of the cult leaders. And as this is a very short one, I am going to go. Please tell me what you think. Some of the traits really do stand to the same, what is happening now with, I would say, the nature boy thing. He is now has that everybody adore me, adore me, adore me, do for me, do for me, do for me. Yes, I can definitely see that in one of these pictures of these cult leaders that is flashing now. So with that said, as I am going to come off right now, please leave a comment underneath this as you've heard the traits. I'm sure we've seen these traits in many of them. Like he lists David Koresh, Jim Jones, always the top ones. Those are always the top cults that is always spoken about. But there are others, and I'm gonna try and do as many cult uh, organizations as I can, as much. I'll probably do like another five or another four. I don't know. It all depends on how I can compile the information, because some of the words, because I've never seen certain words in it, so I will come across words that I've never heard of before. But that's why I rather like to play their sound bites, because the words that I cannot put into place or say, um, the members can say, you know what I mean, the ex-members particularly. So the next one will be definitely the cult in Brixton, because we're going to cover that probably today. If not today, probably tomorrow. And yeah, there is a lot of traits that these men, or well, it's mostly, sometimes it's run by men and women, because there's a cult that was run by a woman, and she was called, I can't remember what she was called now, but she died. She was in gold when they found her body, and she demanded a lot of worship, and even to when she died, even um, so, you know, with that said, I ain't gonna be on here long as well. I'm gonna jump off. This is a very short one because it's just to talk about the traits and the mind of the cult leader. So definitely a grandioso, good complex definitely is the biggest thing that these men carry or women carry. It all depends on the type of cult that it is. Okay. So with that said, I'm gonna pop off. I'll see you later.